Okay, perfect.
It was
Jonathan Simon.
my stump speech standard introduction. It was a dark and stormy night. I'll take it from there because it is. There's so many places to begin trying to shed some light on the big picture here. I guess one of them is that democracy doesn't stand on its own 2 feet independently without any help. But most of us were born into an age where that illusion was part of our education, was part of our upbringing. We were given a democracy, we were born into it, we take it as a given, and believe that it's self-sustaining. And history shows us that that's not the case. History shows us that, first of all, there haven't been that many democracies, and there haven't been many democracies that were even as good as ours. I mean, Athenian democracy was 5% of the populace was given the benefits of democracy. So it's a rare thing. It's rare that it survives for 200 years, and it's likely that it begins to get fairly sclerotic and arthritic with that much passage of time, in spite of the fact that we honor the Founding Fathers and the Constitution and the Declaration and this whole in our schools and in our civics classes. But it needs our help. It very badly needs our help. And it especially needs the help of people who have visions and dreams to turn around what's happening today, and visions and dreams that are happening in all the rooms in the left forum here for a more just and a more equitable world, a world that respects the environment, a world that respects personal choice, et cetera, et cetera. They're not here, you are, so I can't scold you. I wish I could raise my voice loud enough to scold them, because in a sense they all need to be here, or watch the YouTube, or do something to bring awareness to those who have dreams of a world that goes in a different direction from where it's going now, to bring awareness that elections matter, and that the vote counting process therefore matters and is part and parcel of everything that they are working for and hoping for. And unfortunately, the consciousness is at a very, very low level, even among otherwise very astute people who are very dedicated and working very hard. So that's my first point, is democracy really needs us to step up. We can anticipate that there will be forces and continue to be forces that want anything but a democracy, that want control, that want dominion, that want to protect us in ways that involve increasing amounts of power and profit for the protectors. And we're facing that. Karl Rove came right out and said it, just like Hitler put all his goals in Mein Kampf for all to read, and people read it and kind of shrugged. Karl Rove came out and said, look, my goal is perpetual rule, a permanent dynasty. And don't look now, but we're basically there.
That's right.
This horse, this locomotive left the station a long time ago. It's going to be hard to get it back. We're in bad shape. And Code Red, which we're giving, the book that I wrote recently, will take you through a lot of the gory forensic details, right up through the 2014 election, which looks in many ways to be the most egregiously rigged of all the elections.
Yeah.
And it's put us in a place where recovering political balance, let alone political dominance, is a very, very, very difficult. There are many, many obstacles and tremendous inertias, among which are things like gerrymandering and Citizens United and big money. But we believe, based on the forensics that we've adduced, that you could take all those overt methods of tilting the table, gerrymandering, big money, voter suppression, Vote Wednesday robocalls to the houses of your opponent's supporters when the election is Tuesday. They've done that. And one of the questions we have to ask is there a bright line? Is there an ethical bright line between investing in Vote Wednesday robocalls to make sure your opponents don't go to the polls on Tuesday, they show up on Wednesday and everybody's in school? Ooh, missed by that much? Is there a bright ethical line between that and just simply rigging the memory cards? And I don't think so. We live in an age where I think that the line is, okay.
What the hell is that?
Sound like I said something wrong. It's getting too impassioned there. Yeah. So, flash bubble, okay. So, we're in an age where footballs appear to be deflated, where Tour de France riders appear to be injected, as are baseball players, football players. We're in an age where Wall Street tycoons bend every rule that'll bend. You got, credit default swaps and God knows what else. It's a just win baby age. I mean, ethics may survive in the populace at large, but not tremendously strongly among the power elites, whether it's in athletics or in finance or in politics or in academics, where the pressure is tremendous to prevail and to win. So if you wanted to take control of a nation that is looking out and saying, what is happening here? Why is the 1% getting wealthier and wealthier? And why is nobody really doing anything about the environment? Why are so many bad things happening? And you have a majority of people who agree, and yet you want to rule them contrary to those sentiments. You got to pull out all the stops. You got to have gerrymandering. You got to have voter suppression. You got to make those Vote Wednesday robocalls. You got to flood the system with all sorts of dark money and corporate cash. And then, if you're lucky, you've brought things within what I call stuffed nose smell test rigging distance. It can pass the stuffed nose smell test when we get these shocking results. They're not quite so shocking because you've already narrowed the gap with all these other overt techniques and schemes. And then you just add another 7% or so on those memory cards. How would you do it? Okay, very simple. You have a memory card. There are 500,000 lines or so of code on a memory card that goes into a DRE, that goes into an optical scanner, the way we count 98% of our votes in this country. And that memory card is set up with about 500,000 lines of code. You add 3 lines of code, you interpolate them somewhere in this mishmash of routines and subroutines and whatnot, that basically reset the 0 counters on the memory card. So what are 0 counters? Anybody know what a 0 counter is? Okay, some do, most don't. It's not the kind of thing you spend a lot of time on in daily life. So when you're counting ballots by hand, observably, in public, I got a stack of ballots here, and Mark and Bob are running for election, and this is Mark's first ballot. And this is Bob's first ballot, and this is Bob's second ballot. He wins, okay. The table is 0, where there aren't any ballots. And this is number 1, pretty simple. But in a computer, there is no such thing as 0. There's just a line stretching from negative infinity to positive infinity. Of natural numbers, real numbers, imaginary numbers, complex numbers. That's the way a computer works. So you can start at anything. So you take Mark, who I want to defeat, and you set his 0 counter to negative 100. And I take Bob, who's given me a little under the table and I want to win, and set his to positive 100. Negative 100, positive 100. Okay, people vote. Mark's first ballot is negative 99. Bob's first ballot is 101, positive 101. End of the day, let's say they each get 500 actual votes. Mark has 400, Bob has 600. 1,000 votes, 1,000 voters came in. The election administrator looks, says, yeah, it matches the poll tape, certified. You just stole 200 votes on that machine. And that memory card can be duplicated at will. This is child's play. A 6th grader could do this. If you want to do it in self-deleting code and make it a little harder to find, okay. Maybe it would take an 8th grader. But here's the thing, you don't have to do that because nobody ever gets to look at a memory card. Ever. We have an election commissioner here, Virginia Martin, which I would just want to say a few words about Virginia and salute her. But she doesn't get to look at memory cards. Nobody does. We certainly don't. So you could just be a 6th grader. You don't even have to use self-deleting code. It's that easy. Now, the forensics, which you'll see in Code Red, show that there's some results of this being so easy. And the results are the right wing keeps winning elections that it shouldn't win, taking over state houses, state legislatures, taking over governorships, taking over the U.S. House. All these down-ballot races where there's no baselines, no scrutiny, nothing that we can do, really, to verify those elections. Nothing. They're complete pitch dark counting. Virginia, who is co-commissioner, or one of the 2 commissioners of elections in Columbia County, New York, they actually count ballots by hand after they've gone through the op scan. So the ballots have to go through the op scan, that's what state law mandates. They actually open the op scans, pull out all the ballots, and count them. Oh my God. And you know what? To my knowledge, and it's pretty encyclopedic in this era, she is the only person in this country. They are the only place where this happens. In Massachusetts, we have some tiny little villages that hand count. They just do a hand count. That's it. They're not compelled to use the machines except for disabled, et cetera, as secondary count. So they just do a hand count. But nobody actually opens an op scan anywhere. When we try to open an op scan, when Scott Brown beat Martha Coakley, that got shut down so fast. They were opened in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. They looked, they said, Jesus, these don't match the machine counts. Whoops, shut them up, shut them down. No more. Can't look at them anymore. A lot to do battle with. If we could export Virginia's model, we'd be well onto something. Unfortunately, according to Virginia, there isn't a single other county in New York that supports them or wants to do it their way or is willing to even consider doing it their way. This has to change. Only way it's going to change, is with an awful lot of public pressure. Building a foundation that lets these election administrators know, lets the legislators know, lets the operatives know that we're on to them, that we want our democracy back. And that, not only that, we're willing to work for it. We're willing to be deputized as counters and observers. I think it's the least we can do. We got this democracy handed to us. People died for it. People are still dying for it, or going to jail for it, or being exiled for it, or being accused of treason for it. But the vast, vast majority of us, out to the 6th decimal place, basically regard it as something received. Maybe not you who are in this room, but probably many of your friends and colleagues. They need to paradigm shift. Recognize that democracy, we clamor for the rights, but it comes with duties. And one of those duties is to be available to count votes. It's not that hard. They do it in Columbia County. If you do it in Columbia County, you could do it in Manhattan County. There are more voters, but there are more people to count. It's proportional. This is not hard. It's eminently doable. We need the foundation of public awareness. In this, we get no help whatsoever from the media. None, zero.
Of course not.
We get articles like this well-written piece by Elizabeth Drew recently in the New York Review of Books that is, the title has escaped me, but it's basically The Dangers of Our Elections. of our election system. Watch out, here comes 2016, and watch out. And what are the dangers? Voting restrictions, redistricting, gerrymandering, and large amounts of money. And she goes on brilliantly to elucidate and elaborate on all those dangers. Not a word, not a letter, not a syllable about the counting process. A very smart woman writing for a very smart publication. Completely vacant when it comes to what should be the most obvious thing that you want to play. It's the hole in the bottom of the bucket. You can keep pouring water into that bucket all you want. It's going to be dry because there's a hole in it. You got to plug the hole. Nothing. Zippo. Nada. We have to do this. This comes from us. You know, Greg Palast isn't here, but usually when he speaks, he holds up his book, he promotes his book. He wants people to buy his book, and I'm always aghast at that. You know, it's like, oh, it's so self-promoting. I'm gonna channel Greg Palast. Not only do I want you to buy this book, but I want you to buy multiple copies, starting with 2, of this book. So, assuming you read it and think that there's something to it. I mean, obviously, don't take me on faith. Look at it, read it. You get your copy, you get to read it, beta test it. If you think it's potentially a game changer, if you think it could change people's minds, if you think it could alter the dialogue, bring the issue of observable vote counting. We're not trying to turn around the 2004 election. I mean, these are some pretty ugly elections, very red flag. But we're going forward. We're looking forward. What can we do to get an observable vote counting process? If you think this could help in that, then buy some copies and give them to people. Ruin their days if necessary, but spread the word. That's what we're here for. That's really what we're here for, is to spread the word and build a foundation of awareness, concern, outrage, determination, tenacity, because it's going to take all of those things to move this mountain. The inertias are enormous. The actual process of counting the votes is not hard, but the inertias in place, I mean, we see it with climate change, we see it with things like gun safety. I mean, there are other issues that face very great inertias, but hardly any that faces as much inertia as this. You know, most people just are not present when it comes to this, and we need them. And we need them to be able to assemble. And we need people whose goals are being manifest here in the left forum to link together, to come together, recognize that this is part of the realization of their goals. It may be the least sexy part. I mean, if we want, I don't know, happier pigs, you know, there's a big movement now that we should eat grass-fed and free-range pigs. That's a wonderful thing. That's really important. But how long are we going to have that with Republican legislatures controlling every legislature and ultimately the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Commerce? All that's down the drain.
Right.
It's all gone. So the thing with a pig is, you know, you can put Babe on the front cover of your book and everybody goes, aw, and they contribute money and they spread the word and they don't eat any more Oscar Mayer bacon. This is not a sexy picture. There's no Babe. We don't have a Babe. If anybody can come up with a Babe for us, oh my God, it would be a great contribution to the cause. But this is not a sexy issue, but it's a damned important issue. And we have to remember that, and we have to be really determined and really tenacious and do our part and do our duty and get out there and start moving the needle and moving the mountain so that we can have observable vote counting and a restoration of some semblance of honest elections in the United States. Thanks.
Yeah.
Is this the current issue of the New Yorker too?
Of books?
Yeah.
The Elizabeth Drew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make it...
It was a 2-part article. This was
Okay,
part 1,
right.
and she's just done part 2.
Yeah,
They were both.
very quickly. Just right after I had gotten onto this issue, I wrote a letter to The Nation, which they published in the January 12th issue, nominally in response to John Nichols' assessment of why the Republicans did so well in the 2014 elections, which he said was because of voter apathy.
Right.
And I said, John, you know,
Low
please look at this.
turnout,
And
yeah.
I mentioned Jonathan's book, and Jonathan was amazed that they printed this letter. So I would say, Jonathan, now's the time to write to the New York Review with a substantial letter, not just a little thing like my 50 whatever it was words. I mean,
Oh, please, that's brilliant, and give me another 30 seconds to elaborate on that, because I forgot. I have not the most organized mind in the world. One of the things we want as an action step, really need, is a search and response team, preferably led and guided by people who are very savvy about social media and the media in general. What we want is when an article like this comes out, that it gets triggered. Somebody does the Google search, you know, the search words and all that stuff. This comes up. They read it, they say, whoa, what a load of crap, right? You know, it's all brilliantly written, but they've left out the issue of the counting process. Send out a blast of emails with a bunch of talking points, not a templated letter, because those are not very effective, but a brief series of talking points, and a charge to send those letters to the New York Review of Books, or send those letters to MSNBC, or whatever other outlet this kind of thing appears in, and make those points so that they are flooded by some truth, some perspective on this kind of stuff. Because when they don't hear from us, they think nobody cares.
so be sure to get on the sign-up sheet. Okay, we will have a
Where is it?
a core
Is it
group.
going around?
The sign-up sheet.